Okay, so this is the long-awaited comparison video between the Avon M50 in its bag on the left and the Scott GSR in its bag on the right. And what this video is going to hope to display is just how bad a choice it was to go with the GSR of the British Army, which from what I understand now they're actually replacing probably with the M50. So when both of them in their bags, they're both pretty bulky. The GSR's bag is definitely bulkier, mostly because it doesn't have any way that it can really fold up. It's kind of a solid shell. But I will say I do quite like the Scott GSR's bag. Now, as much as I complain about it being big and bulky, it's in MTP camo all across it. It's got lots of useful pouches on it. I think it's a very good bag in itself, just not when you want a compact kind of respirator sort of choice on it. I just noticed there's another additional, it's not additional pouch on the bottom, it looks like it is, it's just how the bag is formed. So anyway, let's get the masks out. Then what I'm going to be doing, you can see I've got some scales there, we're going to be weighing the masks with the filters, weighing the filters themselves, looking at the size of different components, the comfort of it, you know, how well built bits of them are. And as I said, you already know that I'm going to pick the Avon M50 as the winner, but we should get a bit more scientific about it, so that's what we're going to do. So, here are both masks sat next to each other, the Avon M50 on the left, the Scott GSR on the right. Now, you can probably already tell the Scott GSR is a lot bulkier despite it being basically the exact same concept. So just to go over this again for those of you that don't know about this, I think it was in the late 2000s, Britain did basically a gas mask trial, a respirator trial, to pick what would be the respirator to replace the S10 in British Army service. Now, these were the two masks that competed because they had a load of requirements they wanted, which is why they didn't simply keep the S10 or buy FM12s. What they basically wanted was a mask where you could remove the filters and it would make an airtight seal. So basically you could remove one filter at a time and you'd still have complete protection from chemical weapons. I think they wanted something with a panoramic lens most likely, although I've not actually read that in the report. But they basically wanted something that seemed a lot more futuristic and sort of, fancier than what they already had. So both these masks meet the requirements. They both have the filter system where once the filters are removed, basically it makes that side airtight. So in theory you can take a filter off and you don't have to put any blanking plug in. Now I will say my Avon M50, and I don't know if this is because of its age, it doesn't quite seal right when you take the filters off. We'll look at these features in a bit. So I will say the Scott GSR's system for sealing it when you take the filters off is a bit better. However, there's so many other drawbacks that that's not going to really save it from anything. So what ended up happening was the Avon M50 was considered to be the clear winner of the test. This one was considered to be the clear winner. However, either through alleged bribery, obviously I have to be very careful what I say on videos like this, or simply just because Scott offered the masks so much cheaper, the GSR was picked. So basically it's like saying we're going to do a trial to see which is the best product we're going to pick. This one is the clear winner. Oh, actually we're going to go with this one just because it's really, really cheap. Now, what has happened since then is that Scott basically doesn't really exist as the company it was anymore. 3M bought them out. They still make some safety products under the name of Scott, but for the most part it's not actually the same company. Now, the British Army did have quite a big contract with Scott. I don't know how long it went on for, but it was certainly longer than it is now. That basically said Scott will continue making masks for us, and servicing the mask and providing spare parts. That's not going to be honoured anymore because Scott isn't Scott the company. So, and I assume 3M is distancing themselves from this mask quite understandably. So, they've had to go back to Avon, tail between their legs, give Avon a load of money, and most likely are buying these now. The masks they originally said they wanted, and then didn't. So, that's that. I think there was something else I was going to mention about the GSR, which I can't remember now, and that was that they've had lots and lots of problems as well, where even when Scott were delivering them, and Scott was still, a functional company as it was, where if you go on soldiers forums, you can see loads and loads of soldiers complaining about missing bits on the mask and things like that. So for a respirator designed to save your life, lots of these are being supplied in conditions that were completely unfit for service, which does make you wonder why you'd even replace a mask like the S10 that works for something that's sort of not fit for purpose from day one in lots of cases. Anyway, that's enough of the history and the politics behind the masks. let's look at them in a side-by-side comparison. So before we get on to weight, what I want to actually do is just show you the masks side by side from different angles. So obviously Avon M50 on the left, Scott GSR on the right. If I turn them both this way, that's the side profile of the mask. So again, you can see the GSR goes a lot further back. Now if I turn them around this way, if I can get them to sit up alright, that's them from behind. So again, you can see that the Scott GSR is a lot bigger. Feeling them, obviously I'm going to do a proper weight comparison in a minute. The GSR feels heavier. If I take a filter off of the Avon M50, and I take a filter off of the Scott GSR, those are the filters side by side, and as you can probably see, the GSR filter is a lot bigger. If I put them that way, it might be more obvious. Yeah, that's the filters both facing the same way. So the Avon filter is slightly bigger across, but it's literally half the size, if that. Third of the size, half the size that way. And weight-wise, clearly lighter, I think. Anyway, we'll get on to weighing them now. But as you can see, if you're carrying it, the Avon M50 is a lot more compact in pretty much every regard. One of the weirdest things of the Scott GSR is how much they've got this big sticky out plastic bit here that really serves no purpose, because if you unclip this, you can see that, you know, they built the plastic in such a way the voice diaphragm's on top of the valves there, rather than sort of combining them into a simple unit like they did on this mask. Okay, so first let's weigh the Avon M50, and that's in grams and kilograms, which is what we want because that's the unit normal people use. And that is 0.86 kg or 0.85 kg, so 850 to 860 grams. And it seems to be jumping between the two, so that gives you a very good idea of what it weighs, 850 to 860 grams. Obviously that's with both the filters on the mask. Okay, now let's see what the Scott GSR weighs. About 1 kilo and 80 grams to 1 kilo and 70 grams, depending on, you know, where it stabilises. But the point is, you know, it's sort of about 200 odd grams heavier, which isn't great, is it? And obviously, as you can see, it's bulkier. Now, what I will point out, because I'm sure somebody will get otherwise very upset about this in the video, not that it would make much difference, is my M50 is in a small and my GSR is in a medium, but that would never add that much weight normally, or bulk. If you look at a lot of masks between the smallest size and the biggest size, they're generally only a bit larger on the biggest size. So, you know, them being literally one size apart wouldn't really make much difference. Okay, so we've established already that the GSR is heavier. Now let's weigh the filters. Okay, so first let's weigh the Avon filter. And that is about 160 grams, 170 grams. Now let's weigh the Scott GSR filter. And that is 210 grams to 220 grams. So again, the filter is heavier. And as I said before, the GSR filter is a lot bulkier. Now, that would be good in a sense if it provided you a lot more time of actually, you know, having clean, breathable air. However, from everything I've read online, this bulkier filter only is meant to offer about an extra hour or 2 hours protection on the smaller filter. Supposedly, the smaller Avon filter offers something like 18 hours of protection, from what I could read, and you know, these sources are never brilliant. The GSR filter offers something like 20 hours, so it does provide more protection, but not enough to justify the extra weight and bulk. And funnily enough, there are bulkier filters for the Avon M50, which I still think look smaller from the pictures I could see from these Scott filters, and they offer excessively more time. So it seems just in general these filters have too much plastic in them compared to filter medium. Both work in a very similar way. You've got your particle filter at the front, you can probably see, and that would be a P3 filter. Then you've obviously got your Charcon secondary particle filter at the back. So both these filters are primarily the exact same thing. However, how they connect to the mask is different. The Avon one's also got one of these colour changing things, as far as I'm aware, to tell you if the filter's expired or not. Now, how the Avon filter works is when it's pushed into the mask, this opens the valve by being pushed in, and in theory, when you take the filter off, the valve closes again. As I said, because my mask, I think from 2000 or 2001, and I just spotted the date on it, that doesn't work as well as it should. The GSR system, which in some ways is better, it has this sort of bayonet system. You put, when the filter is twisted into the connected positions, that's the bayonet acts like a key that opens the valve. When you twist it to remove it, it closes the valve. That's actually probably a better system. The only issue is that the Avon system allows a lot more airflow, if you compare the size of these sort of things. So you can actually breathe far easier with the M50 on, which I'll get onto now. Oh, I just wanted to point out before I forget that there was a really stupid thing in this mask I've removed that sits in the chin area normally. And it's to, I think it's meant to absorb sweat and help it come out of the mask. It didn't seem to really do anything, but it made the mask even more uncomfortable to wear and added additional weight. So the actual GSR should weigh even more than it does in this video, just to warn you about that before I forget. Now, yeah, to look at the valve system, there you go. That's your system there. Now, interesting enough, there is just a regular 40mm port under all of this crap on there, like the valve assembly. So basically, the GSR's system is just a converter on a 40mm plug. Now, I've never bothered taking this one off because I don't have the correct tools to do it, and I don't really want to break it when I take it off. But in theory, if you remove this bayonet system port and you get the 40mm plug underneath, I imagine you could move this bayonet system onto another mask if you actually wanted to. So, you know, just to say, if you were really into it, you could actually have these sort of filters on a regular 40mm mask, and I assume that would work fine. Again, I've never tried it. Anyway, what I'm going to do is put the filters back on, and as you can see, how the Avon M50 system works is that valve is closed at the moment. When the filter pushes into it, there you go, that opens the valve. And then in theory it should be that when there's no longer weight on there the thing closes, but that doesn't seem to happen for me. So again, when it's closed it will obviously not let anything through. When the filter's on it, it should sort of pop open that valve like that. But again, you're probably not going to see that very well on the camera because it's hard to do it in the viewfinder. In terms of the filters actually being on the mask, both of them are pretty similar. It's just the weird thing with the Avon system is you can only turn them one way round. The Avon ones actually remind me a lot more, funnily enough, of 3M filters, how they go onto a mask. But there you go, that's the system the mask uses. In terms of taking the filters on and off, I don't really have a preference with either. They've both got bits you have to sort of push and pull while twisting the filter. But I will say, as I said, that one point I will give to the Scott GSR is that it does actually seem to be a slightly more reliable system for closing the air off when you take the filter off. But with the M50 you could actually just hold your breath, very quickly push that rubber seal to make it close, and then breathe through the other one filter. Okay, just before I put the masks on and start talking about other sort of features, both have a drinking tube that I'm not going to use. There's a radio communicator clip on this mask as far as I'm aware. Yep, there we go. Under there's a radio communicator clip. No such feature exists on the GSR. The straps, that's obviously what the harness looks like on the GSR. One thing I will say about the GSR straps is they use the same strap buckle on every strap, which I kind of like. Oh, this is from 2007, by the way, the GSR. The Avon mask is from, I did see the date earlier, unless it's underneath where one of the filters goes on. Let's just take that off and have a look. Yeah, there we go. It's 2007. So they're, funnily enough, both from the exact same year. So okay, these masks are literally from the exact same year. There you go. So compare them as a mask from the exact year then. But an odd thing is with the strap design on this mask. So on the bottom you've got your quick adjust straps. That's useful. On here you've got the sort of preset straps, which is actually a better design than with the GSR. because it means that you can set these straps to the sort of tightness you always want them and don't have to adjust them to take the mask off. But what weirds me out is the top straps, because these are actually Velcro, where you adjust the strap and then you Velcro it closed for some reason, as you can see there, which doesn't really make any sense to me, because why would you use this system when you could have just used these? Doesn't really make any sense. Oh, I will also say the M50 has the polycarbonate outsert to protect the eyepieces, and you can use that, take that off fairly easily there. You know, so you've got outsert choices there. As far as I'm aware, there are no GSR outserts. Now, speaking of rubber quality, this is one of the things I really don't like on the GSR. You can see sort of dodgy rubber welding around some of the bits of the lenses there, as well as quite a sloppy glue job done in certain places as well. Whereas, as far as I can tell, the Avon M50 looks much better in terms of rubber quality control, which is pretty important if this thing's to save your life in an NBC scenario. Anyway, let's put the masks on, and I'll do a little talk with the mask on. I'll talk about comfort and how it feels on the head, and then we'll summarise the video up. So first, the Avon M50. So in theory I should only have to tighten the bottom strap, so I'll put it on properly where I'll pull it over my head this way, and then I'll put, what I think these are for, because they're on both masks, is to pull it down into your chin properly. So we'll do that, so let's get this on. So the mask is on my face, let's tighten the bottom straps. We'll do that thing on the chin, then we'll tighten the bottom straps. So in theory all I need to do now is tighten these two straps, so there we go, and that's mask tight onto my face. Yeah, that's pressurising, so this is fairly comfortable. I don't know if I should have got this in a small or medium. I got in the small purely because it worked out a lot cheaper doing that. But my breathing isn't too restricted in this mask. Now, if I take one of the filters off, close that to make sure it closes. That isn't too restrictive, breathing through one side. Again, you wouldn't want to do it, but obviously the system is designed, so that's on backwards. You know, these filters are really always awkward. Same with the GSR, trying to actually put them on once you've had the mask on. So leave the mask wins points for actually doing that well. There we go. Now breathing's easier again. Now the Avon M50 filters, as far as I'm aware, only work this way. The GSR lets you rotate the filters around, allegedly so you can shoot a rifle better. However, if you read the reports of actually using these masks, they actually said with the GSR that rifles and shooting tests had to be abandoned during the trials, you know, but they bought it anyway, because soldiers couldn't actually look down rifle sights or scopes or anything like that with it. So what I'm just going to do now is just prove again that you can look through this mask with binoculars, and I'll take this off, go to the GSR and try and do the same thing. I've done sort of rifle tests with the GSR before. I'm not going to bother doing all that again, but let's just say the GSR really doesn't work for that, so the MOD internal notes were correct on that assumption. But overall, yeah, this mask would be fairly comfortable if you had to have it on for a long time, especially if you got one that was properly in your size. But let me just demonstrate that binoculars do actually work with this mask. So Avon M50 with binoculars, yeah, I can see through them. So yeah, that works fine. Okay, now for the GSR. Okay, so that's this mask on. A lot less comfortable. Generally just because everything inside sits tighter to your face.
So basically whenever I open my mouth it's always brushing into like the plastic at the front of the mask where all the valve assemblies are. Yeah, so every time I open my mouth it is brushing against the plastic just because of how they design the inside of this mask. Now if I just demonstrate this filter system to you, basically that's the reverse position that it also lets you breathe through, but it's supposedly better for shooting, although in reality it's not. And if you have it obviously in this way you can take it off. Again, it's one of those filters that doesn't really work very well trying to get it back on. So yeah, I think this is a bit easier than the Avon M50's filter system, to say that. So overall the filters on this are a bit better to take on and off, and the valve system works better. However, the Avon filters let you breathe easier and they seem to be more efficient filters. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, but that's mostly the only good stuff. Now, the field of view is very similar on both masks, but the problem with this one is because it's got this bendy bit of plastic, where the actual M50 didn't need that, it has a flat piece, you get a little bit of view distortion on this. Not to a bad degree, but it exists. Now, because this is a bendy bit of plastic, you know what the problem's going to be now. Much harder to get a good binocular picture. Now it can be done to a degree, but it doesn't work as well. And this is the problem, is if you're trying to actually shoulder a rifle with a scope on it and tilt your head and everything else with the filter getting in the way, you're not going to get a sight picture. That's the problem. Again, this is slightly more comfortable to me, this mask, only in regards of it's actually a better fit size to my face. I think a medium M50 would fit me better for the most part. But again, like I said, I only bought the small one because it was a lot cheaper than getting a medium one, because I can't afford to spend hundreds on a mask. However, in terms of the feel and quality and everything inside, the M50 wins by miles over the GSR. Like I said, the strap system on this isn't bad. The harness is definitely nicer on the other mask, but this one's not actually bad. But you know, this you can really see, I think, when you compare the two masks. If I hold this one up, you know why the M50 is actually the better mask. Just, it should be obvious just doing that, the size difference between the two. You know, that actually has all the features built to a better quality standard than this thing does. Despite the extra bulk and weight of this. I mean, literally just look at the size difference. It's just insane. You know, when you're looking at the massive bulky filters on this, massive bulky front section that sits straight out. But, you know, and as far as I'm aware, the M50 wasn't plagued with quality control problems. So, that about sums it up. The GSR, in my opinion, never should have replaced the S10, because they went from a mask that was simple but very good to a mask that's overcomplicated and had very bad quality control issues, which could cost people their lives, ultimately. If they were going to go with one of these futuristic masks, they definitely should have gone with the M50, because almost every feature it does better. Like I said, other than the filters being a bit easier to take on and off on this, and then having like a more reliable valve system on this mask, that's about it. You know, this one's capable of radio communication directly from the mask. You know, the filters are better for their size. It's got much better frontal lenses. Voice diaphragms I think are pretty similar on both, so nobody really wins in that regard. But if you just look mostly, you know, regard the weight and size of the masks, that's where you have a very clear winner with the Avon M50.